Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the GoFly webinar this morning. To kick us off, I'm going to pass it over to Gwen Leiter, CEO and founder of GoFly. Gwen?
Thank you, Paul, and hello, everyone. We are so pleased that you could join us today for another GoFly lecture. As you know, GoFly is sponsored with our grand sponsor, the Boeing company, and we are so pleased to have Boeing as our partner. In addition to Boeing, we are supported by over 20 different aerospace and engineering and STEM organizations internationally. We are thrilled to have them as our partners as well. And today, we bring you a lecture with Clarissa Redwine. Clarissa is the design and technology outreach leader at Kickstarter. And so we are so very pleased to welcome her as she will guide all of us and all of our teams to learn about Kickstarter's programming and platform and how our teams can potentially use Kickstarter to raise the funding needed for their builds. So without further ado, thank you so much, Clarissa, for joining us, and we turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Gwen. Yes, this is really exciting. And for everyone who's joined, I am just going to share my screen really quickly, and then we can kick off a little presentation. Basically, I'm going to start with a little bit of background on Kickstarter, and then I'm going to jump into how you can build a successful campaign. So I know a lot of you are starting out on your journey. You have quite a few years to think about building up your community, and that's perfect for Kickstarter because one of the most important parts is building a community before you come and launch a project. And we'll talk about all of this in the coming slides and then take questions after. All right, so just to kick off, I'm Clarissa. So a little bit about my role at Kickstarter. I handle all of our West Coast outreach, which basically means that I hop up and down the West Coast from the States and go to LA and Seattle and meet really creative people who are building interesting hardware. And then I talk to them about their launch strategy and how Kickstarter can fit into that overall plan. So that's me in a nutshell. And then also, Kickstarter has had a ton of creative projects successfully launched on the platform and fully funded. So if you can see my slides, you know, there are thousands of projects that have launched. And $3.4 billion have come through Kickstarter to help bring these creative projects to life. And this is from a community that's pretty much global at this point. We have backers from almost every country on Earth, all 7 continents, including Antarctica, which is pretty fun to think about a backer looking at Kickstarter in an ice base somewhere. It's pretty exciting. And then also, we've had 14 million backers come to Kickstarter and look at creative projects. And what's really exciting to us is about a third of all the backers that come to Kickstarter back multiple projects. So this means that they come for maybe a project that they saw online or their cousin's project or their favorite band's project or maybe a cool new startup that they've been following just launched. And they find the platform pretty compelling and they get sort of drawn in by other creative projects and they come back time and time again to continue to back projects that are just launching on Kickstarter. You know, they come and browse. And this is actually really important for people who are thinking about launching a project on Kickstarter because there is a built-in audience of people, about a third of our audience comes back to Kickstarter and expects a certain vibe, they expect a certain conduct from creators. So these are all sort of norms that creators need to take they need to keep in mind, you know, as they're launching Kickstarter. So, and also another exciting thing about that particular group of people is the 30% of backers who are coming back and backing multiple projects, they contribute the majority of funding on Kickstarter. They contribute about 60% of all the funding that come to these creative projects. So, you know, this is a very influential group of people, and they're really committed to seeing creative projects make the leap into reality. All right, so what is Kickstarter all about? You know, what do we care about? What will make us interested in a project and want to feature that project? That's a question I get a lot. And what we're really interested in is some sort of innovation that has an impact on culture. We're interested in sort of facilitating culture in the next 6 to 9 months, you know? So whatever you see on Kickstarter is sort of a window into the near future. And we are a public benefits corporation, and this just means that we're still a for-profit company, but we have social goals that we track and measure. So each year we have to go to our board and talk about the goals that we accomplished, like maybe lobbying for net neutrality or LGBT rights, or we track all of the jobs that are created through Kickstarter campaigns. And all of this is tracked on our website, so you can take a look. And the real point of this is we wanted Kickstarter to act more like a person who has goals beyond profit. So we do hold ourselves to a higher standard in how we impact the world around us. All right, I wonder if this video is going to play, but this is an amazing project called Mindcaphone. And basically, I wanted to share a few of the standout projects with you guys. So this project in particular is, oh, there we go. I hope you guys can see this. This is an amazing design project. We are very interested in well-designed projects that either use materials in a different way or a strikingly different approach to solving a problem. So Mindcaphone is, I wonder if any of you guys have figured this out already, but this is a mine detonator. And the creators of this project came to Kickstarter with the idea of creating a very low-cost mine detonator to just roll across the desert and explode mines that have been unfound. And the cool thing is, whenever they were young kids, they used to play around by collecting lots of little scraps of plastic and paper, anything that they could find around the house. And they would sort of put these scraps together into these little toys that could be carried by the wind over the desert that they used to play in. And they thought, whenever they grew up, why don't we create something that is similar to those toys that we used to make as kids, you know, super low cost, cheap materials that can be carried by the wind or by its own weight, and apply it to this problem that we see in the neighborhoods we used to play in. So, that being said, this is an amazing design project that is now in the permanent collection of MoMA in New York. And the perfect example of a Kickstarter project that we like to see. All right, another really great project. I hope you guys have had a chance to play with one of these. So this is 3Doodler. They introduced the world's first 3D printing pen on Kickstarter. And that is another area that we are incredibly interested in at Kickstarter, is creative tools. So if we see a creative tool on the site, we usually give it a little bit more attention than other projects because we love the vibe that it gives Kickstarter, you know, the collaborative, creative vibe. And 3Doodler is a great example of this on Kickstarter, and they're also a bestseller in the MoMA design store. All right, and this is sort of closer to what all of you guys are working in. So we're also interested in science and exploration and anything that is sort of an engineering feat. So a good example is a satellite. This is a slice of pizza that was sent into space for a music video. But these are the types of things that we are interested in as well. So we have high design, creative tools, and also science and exploration. So if you're building something that allows backers to experience something in a drastically new way, that's another thing that we're incredibly interested in. All right, so now I'm going to get into the mechanics of how to build a strong Kickstarter campaign. And first and foremost, every Kickstarter campaign is a story, and the best ones have a really compelling, well thought out narrative. And there are two narratives that I wanted to share with you guys that I've sort of noticed over the years while working at Kickstarter. One narrative is around innovation. The story goes, you know, hey, we're working on something that could change the world and we want you to be a part of it. And Oculus is a really great example of this type of story. So they came to backers and said, hey, we're creating a new way for people to experience content and you know, be transported to different places in the world through virtual reality and connect with people in a different way through virtual reality. So this was a great movement type campaign where people felt like they were part of a movement. The second type of story, I use this fancy little Proust quote to describe it, but the second type of story is basically one about craft and design. So there can be an object like this field skillet. This project is called the field skillet. It's a cast iron skillet. You know, a field skillet is something that a lot of us use every day. We don't necessarily stop to think about the design behind the skillet. And there are a lot of projects on Kickstarter that take pretty much a object you use every day and design it in a really beautiful way and showcase how they came to that design. You know, they really show the creative process of making the, for example, field skillet, going to the factory, seeing it pressed and cut and all of those things, or injection molded, you know, however the product is made. And that's something that people really love to see on Kickstarter. So, you know, the voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. You're giving your backers a new perspective. All right, so I thought I would share a few stories that we really love so that you guys could get an even better understanding of what Kickstarter is looking for whenever we see a project campaign on Kickstarter. So first of all, I'm sharing my absolute favorite project with you guys. This is my personal favorite project. So Slow Dance is basically a frame that someone built basically a strobe light into the interior of the frame. And if you've ever been at a party where the lights are flashing and it looks like everyone's moving in slow motion, that effect is something similar here. So as you can see, this frame is showcasing a little object that's being basically vibrated, or yeah, this is sort of shaking back and forth. And because there's a strobe light, it looks like the object has been slowed down and is moving in slow motion. So this is all in real time. And it's just a very beautiful project from a creator that was experimenting with how we perceive things and time. All right, I could watch this all day, so I'm moving on. But if any of you want to take a look at this project, it's called Slow Dance. All right, another sort of classic Kickstarter project is this little drawing robot. So Linus is a little robot that you can use to send an image to a friend. So the idea is you would each have one of these little robots mounted to your wall or on your desk, and there's an app paired to it where you can draw something in the app or select a piece of art in the app and send it to your friend, and this cute little robot will draw a very squiggly little line drawing in your friend's home. So it's a nice way to share art or share messages, and just a very sweet little project and very well designed. All right, so now we're going to talk about even more sort of campaign mechanics, and I'm going to dive into the specific parts of a campaign, you know, like building your community, building a page. And we can always talk about this in more detail in the questions, but I'm just going to go over the best practices and highlights of sort of things you need to start thinking about if you're planning a Kickstarter campaign. All right, so there are many campaigns that are kind of similar to what you guys are working on. There are campaigns that have been part of big competitions like the Hyperloop Challenge. There have also been teams that have built sort of personal flying devices, although these are sort of smaller campaigns on Kickstarter that are just getting started or getting people excited about building a prototype around this. I have not seen yet a personal flying device that has raised, probably enough to manufacture, which would be quite a bit. But mainly, I would assume that you guys are coming to Kickstarter to build community and have outside funding. But we can talk about all of this later. All right, so another good example of a flight on Kickstarter. Not necessarily exactly what you guys are trying to accomplish, but this is an example of a satellite that was launched on Kickstarter by Bill Nye and his organization at the Planetary Society. So Bill Nye was talking about this satellite that Carl Sagan originally thought up, and this satellite is propelled through space by this very thin mylar sail that's pushed by photons from the sun. So a very interesting project, and yeah, this is more of one of the big scale projects that raised over $1 million to help bring this to life. And this is a fun video.
Explore space using a technology that was proposed about a century. We're going to use a miniaturized satellite. There's a standard now called CubeSat, cubicle satellite. Now, coming out of our little CubeSat are 32 square meters of super shiny mylar. It's bigger than the ceiling. Well, I mean, you can't see the ceiling. It's big. Now, you may not have thought about it, but light is made of photons, and photons have no mass, but they have momentum. It's surprising. So if sunlight is shining on something, it's actually giving it a tiny, tiny push. So if we can get a spacecraft up in space that has enough area and is low enough mass, sunlight gives it a push.
All right, so that's a really good example of creator that can explain something that not the average, the average backer probably won't know what a solar sail is. And of course, Bill Nye is the expert on explaining complicated concepts to everyday people who are just enthusiastic about learning new things about science and engineering. So really good example of a flight on Kickstarter, even though it's not exactly what you guys are working on. All right, and this is the traditional picture of flight on Kickstarter. So there are quite a few drones that launch on Kickstarter, and they do quite well. So this is a campaign that I'm working with actually right now. They're in the middle of funding, and they've built a modular drone that you can put together on the go or stick on your bike and take with you, and quickly throw it up into the air and let it take off. So this is really what we see a lot of on Kickstarter, and the large-scale flight projects are a little bit more rare, but exciting when we see them on the platform. All right, so one thing that's incredibly important as you're building up your page or planning for a Kickstarter campaign is that prototypes are quite important, and they're important for a couple different reasons. Number one, prototypes really build trust with the community on Kickstarter, especially when you're building something that's very innovative, very complex. People want to know that that you're far along in the process, or at least you're being transparent at the stage that you find yourself. So a good example is the Nebbia shower. This team built a shower that saves 70% of the water that you use when you normally shower. And they did a great job sharing all of their sketches, all of the iterations of their prototypes, and really bringing the community into the process and making them feel like they're part of the journey. And another really great reason that they shared all of this work is to demonstrate how much they thought about the design of this project and how it would fit into the lives of the backers, and this very curated experience of the interior of your home. People care about how they shape the experience of their home and their daily routines. So that was another reason that showing their prototypes meant a lot to their backers. All right, and we do have pretty strict guides around renderings and the demos that we ask of creators. We ask creators to share a demo video with no, movie magic, no editing, showing the hardware and the software working together. And that does not have to be 100% polished. There can be a few kinks in your demo. We just need to show the backers that, you guys are working on this and that this is truly the stage at which this is, at which the prototype has been developed. So, so we do ask for that. We don't allow photorealistic renderings on Kickstarter because early on, whenever hardware was really taking off at Kickstarter, we saw quite a few projects that were getting a lot of funding that only had renderings, and it was very unclear how far along they were in the prototyping process or manufacturing, design for manufacturing. So we decided, a few bad apples ruined it for the bunch, and now we no longer allow photorealistic renderings anywhere on the site. And that can be a little tough for projects that are building big products or things like satellites, or things that you can't easily build a physical prototype quickly. And that's something that we can talk about in Q&A as well, if you guys are curious. And also, we do allow exploded view renderings, just as a little caveat. So if you have a product that's totally pulled apart and floating in the air, and no one can mistake it for an actual product sitting on a desk, then that is totally fine. All right, so other things to keep in mind, if any of you guys have backed Kickstarter campaigns, you've seen all of these elements. They're pretty prominent. The main image and title and short blurb are probably some of the most high value real estate on your Kickstarter campaign page. And that's because those elements are the things that backers are seeing whenever they're browsing Kickstarter. So you want a main image that is very colorful and bright, and also not cluttered with badges or banners or stickers or text or logos. Those are all things that clutter the main image and make it very unattractive whenever it's small. So I know these are sort of in the weeds details, but it'll come in handy as you're building assets for your Kickstarter campaign. So keep that in mind. Also, the title, we see all the time on Kickstarter, people will put world's best or world's first in their title. And it's been so overused on Kickstarter that hyperbole is just seen as almost clutter to that title. And it's much better to be descriptive and to showcase how this product is going to be used in someone's life. So yeah, try to stay away from hyperbole and stay descriptive. Those are the tips I have there. All right, yeah, that's pretty much everything I just covered. Another thing to keep in mind is your thumbnail. It's going to be small on mobile, especially. So yeah, just keep that in mind too. It's not always going to be full screen like you are editing it in. All right, so the project video is another pretty important element of the campaign. Although some creators will come up to me and say, I hear you have to spend a ton of money on a campaign video, because they see really well-funded projects that have super slick, expensive videos on Kickstarter. And so from my experience, the creators that I work with that have super slick videos and fund a lot, the correlation of high funding and a slick video is not really as tightly tied as you would think it is. Usually the reason that project is really highly funded is either because they've spent a lot of time building up a community before the campaign, or in addition to a lot of money that they spent on their video, they also are spending quite a bit in marketing and advertising while the campaign is live. And that's something that you don't see. It's sort of like a hidden aspect of what's driving a lot of those funding dollars. So my takeaway for you guys is don't assume that you need a super expensive, highly produced video in order to raise a lot of funding on Kickstarter. As long as your video showcases the product and the features in a compelling way, that's really all you need. And you definitely don't want it to feel like a commercial, because that can turn backers off, and it can also set expectations very, very high. You know, when people feel like it's a very slick video that feels like a commercial from a well-established company, they treat you differently. They hold you to higher expectations. If you have any slip-ups in manufacturing or anything like that, they're a little bit less forgiving. So these are all things to keep in mind whenever you're creating your campaign video. And we're gonna watch a video that is a compilation of all of our favorite videos squished into one. And as you watch this, it's about 1.5 minutes. Keep in mind that we've kept the elements of a really good project video intact. So you'll see someone introducing themselves, you'll see them talking about their product, making a call for the backers' action, you know, to actually pledge to the campaign. And like a good, strong goodbye. So let me play this next video and you guys can get a sense of what makes a really great Kickstarter campaign. All right, let's see.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
What's up, people?
Hi.
Hey. Hello. I thought we were going to do hello.
Hi.
I love your new shoes. Are those new shoes?
Hi, my name is Raquel.
And I could go on, but this is a Kickstarter campaign video, and I haven't even told you what my project is yet. So the idea is this.
I'm writing a book.
The feature film
Stop motion animations.
Sci-fi music video album.
What people actually be able to buy a couture dress that they themselves design.
I want to make a new graphic novel, and I want you to get some original art.
This time I decided to write things that were more lyrical.
I hope to make something strange and unique for you to enjoy.
I made a film called Codependent Lesbian Space Alien Seek Sane.
Right now, I'm sitting on over 200 hours of incredible footage.
I'd like your help to complete it.
Cut out all that extraneous stuff, all this extraneous costs, and get to the point, which is simply more art in front of more people.
The last piece of the puzzle is going to be you. We cannot do this without you. We can't.
We need you to be a part of this. This is a collaborative experience.
If you back this Kickstarter project, you will be cool, and everybody will like you.
I want to make a show that you don't just watch. Something unpredictable, strange, and maybe even amazing. So let's do this thing.
I'm really excited for this. I think that this is worth doing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our Kickstarter.
Let's go make a story.
We can make it together.
Awesome. So I'm sure you guys sort of picked up on some of the main elements. And the one that sort of gets lost sometimes is a really strong ask. So just, don't be shy. You can always find an interesting way to do it, but telling your backers that you want to do this with them and you need their help and you're excited to make them part of this journey, that's probably the single most important element in this main video, because everywhere else on the campaign page, you can tell them about what you're building. You can tell them about the process, the design process, everything like that. It's really in this main video where we get a taste of your passion, and how you want them to be a part of what you're excited about. And just keep in mind that the best timing for a video is about 2 minutes, and you want to quickly show what you're working on in the first 15 to 30 seconds. A big long build up to what you're working on doesn't quite work because people will simply click away. They'll get impatient. But yeah, showing what you're working on really quickly early on in the video, and then closing up with a strong statement about your passion and how you want the community to be involved are essential in a good Kickstarter video. All right, so now we're to rewards, which is an interesting section for projects that are building very large-scale things, because not everyone can get a satellite, or it might not even be offered. So for project rewards for very big campaigns, there are a couple different options. So the types of rewards are the thing itself. So if you have a pair of headphones, a VR headset, something like that, you're offering the thing to backers. There's an experience, so maybe a tour of your workshop, something like that. A memento is a type of small project or small item that celebrates the main mission of the project. And then an acknowledgement is something really small, like a thank you on Twitter or something, or the name of your backer on the wall of your workshop, something pretty easy to do. And some really good examples. So this is an example from a creator that was making a giant air filter in a park. And it was supposed to be sort of half art installation, half functional air filter. But it was giant, it was huge. So this wasn't really meant to be something to give to backers. So he created a really beautiful memento reward, which is this little ring. And inside the ring is the condensed smog that they pulled out of the air. So every ring was representative of a certain amount of pollutants that were pulled out of the air through the actual air filter that the backers helped create. So just a really beautiful, meaningful item that ties backers back to the main project. That is a really great example of a memento. Sort of a so-so example of a memento is something like a t-shirt or a sticker or a mission patch, but I would challenge all of you to think beyond those sort of standard memento rewards. All right, another really amazing example. This is probably my second favorite project on Kickstarter. It's very fun. So this creator was growing chairs. So over the course of 5 years, he would slowly shape a chair out of a growing small tree. And he has a whole orchard, I guess you'd call it an orchard, in the UK, and he's growing chairs there right now. And not everyone could get a chair because they're sort of a piece of fine art. But he wanted to give people a really beautiful experience that's tied to the chair. And this is a great example because he would give people tours. So he would show them, how they make the chair, how they harvest the chair, and tell them the story behind how he came to this. So the creator had a misshapen spine when he was a kid, and he spent many, many months in the hospital having his spine slowly reshaped. And that stuck with him, the idea that you could slowly shape a natural thing into the form that you want. So yeah, the backers get a really amazing hands-on experience, even though they can't back specifically for the chair itself. And this is a great example of an experiential reward. All right, so we've covered the types of rewards. And another good thing to keep in mind is that the $25 reward tier is the most commonly pledged on Kickstarter. So that seems to be the most accessible reward tier. But in my opinion, I think that many creators think that $25 is a solid tier to have. So that's a very common tier that they offer to backers. So that might also be a little bit of skewed data on our part. But I would say that having a $25 reward tier is probably a good idea. So thinking about a memento reward or even an acknowledgement where you send someone a postcard or something, that's all really great for a $25 amount. And then also the $100 reward tier is also another common tier that we see that seems to generate the most money for a campaign. So if you have a $100 reward tier, that's also a very commonly pledged tier. But of course, the price is higher, so it actually contributes more to your campaign. And 5 to 7 rewards is really the max amount that you want to have on the page. I would actually suggest that you launch with 3 rewards, maybe an early bird reward and a couple memento rewards, something small. And then you introduce a new reward maybe a week into your campaign as an exciting announcement. If you start off with 5 to 7 rewards, then you have no room to introduce new rewards and have those exciting announcements throughout your campaign. And you run the risk of just complicating your campaign and overwhelming backers with too much choice if you start adding the 8th and 9th rewards. All right, so project updates. If any of you guys have backed a Kickstarter project, you're very familiar with campaign updates. This is a simple email that is sent to a backer as soon as they are subscribed to your campaign. So if someone backs your campaign for $1 or they back it for $100 or $1,000, they're automatically subscribed to your mailing list. And every time you post a campaign update, they get it delivered to their inbox. And campaign updates should be very interesting, richly detailed pieces of content that showcase either the design process or your progress in a really compelling way that encourages backers to share information about your campaign. And you should probably think about a cadence of maybe one campaign update every 4 days while your campaign is live, and then another after your campaign is closed up, campaign updates once a month. That's a pretty good cadence. And I have a really good example. So this is a team at UCSD who built a 3D printed rocket engine, and they had really amazing campaign updates where they would walk us through their workshop and share different components that they were building or things that they were working on, why they were building them a certain way, how they were thinking about the whole product. And then also they shared their tests that they had with us and even their launch. And my favorite campaign update, they shared their team celebrating. So these are all things that backers are really excited to see. And it helps them connect with your project and stay engaged over the many, many months that you'll be working to actually bring this project to life after they've pledged for it and after the campaign is ended. All right, these are also very good examples. So Chip did a really amazing job. They made this very cheap computer that hackers could use to build other things. And they would have rich demos in their campaign updates. They actually collaborated with creative people to create a demo that they could release every week during their campaign. So every week during their campaign, they had this really amazing shareable content that excited their backers. All right, and this is another really great example of a campaign update. If any of you guys are familiar with LeVar Burton, he had a project on Kickstarter for Reading Rainbow, and this campaign update, I would play it, but the video is a little bit sketchy. But if you want to check it out on Kickstarter, it's the very first campaign update that they posted, and it's about a minute, maybe 30 seconds, I'm not quite sure, and it's simply LeVar Burton turning to the camera after they hit $1 million in funding, and there's a single tear running down his cheek, and he says, thank you so much. We're so humbled by this experience, and we can't believe your support. And that's it. And this simple update that took maybe 5 minutes for their team to shoot and upload exploded on the site. There were so many comments. There were people sharing this. It was a very, very heartwarming campaign update. And the reason I bring up this example is updates don't necessarily have to be packed with information. They just need to have a density of passion, So yeah, that's another good example. All right, so I love that you guys are getting introduced to Kickstarter so early, because being proactive is a big part of Kickstarter. Sometimes people think that they can come to the platform and launch a project as an unknown creator or a relatively unknown creator, and that's not really the case. Sometimes creators can launch without having a community built up beforehand, and it goes viral or something happens that's unexpected. But usually you need to have an email list, you need to have assets that are compelling, and to have tracked your progress over the development process, you know, capturing all the design challenges and the wins that your team has had, and all of the iterations of the prototype. Those are all things that you should be having really rich assets made, taking photos, things like that. Even video of building demos is really important to have. So these are all things that you can think about in advance of a Kickstarter campaign. Another thing to think about is getting out there and going to events and talking about what you're building. You don't necessarily have to share proprietary information, but getting people excited about the fact that you're working on something very innovative that could potentially change their lives. That is a good way to build up a community, get people following you, send newsletters. These are all things to keep people engaged so that when you do launch, on day one, you can send your followers a message and say, hey, we're ready. You know, if you want to support us, come out and do it right now. And that type of momentum is what can make or break a campaign in the first 24 to 48 hours. You want to have a lot of momentum in the beginning to get people excited and to also demonstrate that you have people who believe in your project. All right. So a good example of outreach is OSIC. They were making, it's basically 3D audio headphones. And these headphones have 4 drivers in each side, so they can send you sound in a very directional way. So if you're playing VR or listening to music that has that capability of having, you know, the drums, so it feels like you're at a concert. Yeah, so they have a particular product that's not easy to create a video of the demo. You know, you can't really see what's happening to someone or experience this through just watching a video or even listening to a video because their sound technology doesn't work on your laptop, obviously. So what they did is they had over 1,000 people try their headphones, and they captured those reactions. And not only did they get really great feedback early on because they were giving demos very early, they also had all these amazing reactions when people, you know, actually experienced this type of audio for the very first time. And that really helped build trust in their campaign. It helped get people excited. And it also helped people feel invested in their campaign. You know, after you try it and you get on their email list and you see them improving month after month, you feel invested in that progress because you helped give feedback. Yeah, so another really great strategy. All right, so funding goals are also a pretty important part of a Kickstarter campaign, and people come to Kickstarter for different reasons, and your funding goals should probably reflect that reason. So if you're building community and you have outside funding, then you can go ahead and have a smaller goal. But keep in mind that Kickstarter takes 5%, and you probably need extra funding for like shipping and community support in case you need to hire someone to answer questions. All right, and we have all or nothing funding. I'm almost wrapping up and then we can get to Q&A. So all or nothing funding means you set a specific amount of time and a specific funding amount. And if you don't hit that funding goal within that amount of time, then no backers' credit cards are charged. Everyone just walks away, and you can try again some other time. But if you do hit that funding amount, then you collect that amount of funds. And why we use that is because it's less risk for our backers. If you say you need $200,000 to create the first run of your product, then we want you to raise that amount. Otherwise, it's unlikely that you'll be able to actually create the product at the quality that you promised backers. And then also, it's compelling. People see that you have a deadline and they want to pledge now and as much as they can. All right. We are ready for Q&A, so I'm going to stop screen sharing. And thank you. All right.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Clarissa.
I hope I left enough time.
Yeah, for sure. No, plenty of time for questions. So we've got a couple already.
Awesome.
So what are the first steps to setting up a campaign? What do you do first?
Yeah, so I think first steps, first of all, you probably need to start testing out your content on Facebook. So say like with Facebook ads. So early on when you're thinking about running a campaign, you need to test if you have a compelling product and user experience first. And a good way to do that online is just to set up a few, A/B test a couple ads on Facebook to see if people are interested in this product. And if you don't get a lot of hits on Facebook, then either you need to, recalibrate how you're sharing your product, or maybe you need to go back and figure out a different user experience or rethink the product altogether. That's just a really good way to start testing if you're ready for Kickstarter.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
So let's say you're successful in your Kickstarter project and you raise the money that you plan to raise. You hit your goal. How do you actually get your money?
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes to your bank account. Yeah, so if you hit your goal, that's amazing. And hopefully you would hit your goal and surpass your goal, as the campaign is going. And that is a really interesting problem to have because if you hit your goal relatively early, then you're more likely to keep raising money and keep getting people excited. But you do have to do some work in the middle of that campaign to keep people excited because they think, oh, you've already raised all the money you need. But after you go ahead and raise that money and the campaign closes out, then our payments processor, Stripe, goes ahead and processes those payments. And a funny thing that can happen is some backers' credit cards will expire, or they'll change their credit card or something like that, and we will ping them again to change that information. I don't know if whoever asked that question wants that sort of detail, but yeah, and then you collect your money and hopefully you go on to manufacture or build a prototype if that's what you're doing, and the backers will want to keep updated. So as you're building your product with that funding, you probably want to carve out time to actually update and share what you're working on with your backers.
Great, thanks. So lots of Kickstarters have to do with things that can be tangible really quickly.
Yeah.
And GoFly maybe is a little bit different, right? Because people are submitting their designs to the GoFly competition in phase 1, and then building will take place later on down the road. And it might be a while before people are getting to that prototype stage. Do you have any specific recommendations for that kind of project on Kickstarter?
Yes, absolutely. So when people back a project that is not for something tangible, like maybe you're putting a satellite into space or something like that, or building your personal flying device or something, they are really interested in getting a behind-the-scenes look at the process of building something that innovative. So keeping them updated and promising in advance during the campaign and demonstrating that you're going to share that kind of rich content is really what they're looking for. So as you're building out a page, you want to make sure to, really show details of what you're building. I mean, nothing proprietary, but stuff that people would be excited about. Pictures, videos, things like that. And then say, hey, if you back this campaign, you're going to be part of the journey and we'll continue to share our progress with you. And then over the year or 2 years that you're developing this, however long you take to get the first stage of your product that you promised to backers. Say you promised a working production-ready model or something like that. Then you can show it and celebrate with your backers with maybe like an in-person event where they can see that thing that you made. Yeah, that could be really interesting too. But that is a tough situation on Kickstarter. Like I also worked with a creator that was building a very large telescope, and they created a custom reward that was similar to like the small items that you would normally see on Kickstarter. And that was a really good strategy because it allowed them to promote something that Kickstarter backers are used to, which is a physical item. But all of the overflow money went to the telescope. So that's another good option.
Great. And then you talked a little bit about testing content on social media and testing your content ahead of the Kickstarter project. Can you talk a little bit more about what types of benefits that might have past just seeing how good your content's working?
Yeah, absolutely. So testing your content can let you do a couple things. So on Facebook, if you're having ads and showcasing what you're working on, then you can always point people to a sign-up page. So you're building your email list. That's like sort of the primary reason that you would be doing that kind of work, because that's also the most valuable thing that you can do before the campaign is build up your community. So hopefully you're driving people to a place where they can easily sign up and get updated and stay involved. Also, you're testing out your messaging. So beyond testing out maybe the main image of your campaign and the title or the short blurb through Facebook, you can also test out parts of the story and see which parts of the story are most compelling. So say people are really excited about learning about the actual dynamics of flight or something like that. Once you figure that out, that's a nice sticky piece of content, then you can it helps you build the rest of your page. Yeah, and those are really the primary reasons why you would test things out on Facebook. And beyond that, you're ultimately saving yourself money, hopefully, because if you fine-tune your marketing before the campaign starts, then you're not, putting in a bunch of money into ads that don't perform well. That's pretty simple. Yes.
Should you have a group of people that are like probably going to back your Kickstarter before you start your Kickstarter? Is that a good idea?
Absolutely. And that's, if I wasn't clear, that's what I mean whenever I'm talking about building up an email list. You want a group of people that are cheering you on and almost in a frenzy to back you. That is what really can make or break a Kickstarter campaign. If you come to Kickstarter without a community built up that's excited to back your project, then it can be really hard in those first couple days to gain traction and momentum. And that can change the perception of your campaign. If people see that you've gone 10 days out of 30 and you've only reached 10% of your goal, that can be kind of a deterrent, because people think, oh, whoa, is there something wrong with this? Are backers seeing something that I'm not? Maybe the product can't actually fly or something like that. And I'm just the average Joe and I don't know that. So it's almost like building up, almost like what testimonials would do if you have a lot of backers that you've been building up over time and are ready to back on day one.
Do you have a recommendation for the right number of people to sort of have in that pre-engagement group?
That's another really great question. So math is the answer. So on Kickstarter, this is going to be a long answer, so buckle up. On Kickstarter, the average amount of funding that creators get from the Kickstarter platform is 30%. And 70% of the funding, the final funding that they get from the campaign, is driven by their own action. So this is their outside community or people seeing it on Facebook or through PR efforts. They're driving all of that themselves. So if you have a specific goal, you can work backwards from that goal. You can say, okay, I have an X amount of funding that I want. I need to drive 70% of that funding, ultimately. If I look at my email list, that is going to actually convert at maybe 1 to 5%, and you can do some tests to figure that out as well. So maybe 1 to 5% of all the people on my email list, on my newsletter that I built up before the campaign are actually going to pledge to my campaign. And then Facebook is less than 1%. So you can kind of see what your engagement levels are through your various channels that you're using to talk to your community. And then you can sort of project how much you assume that you're going to be able to drive to the page. And then it's pretty safe to assume that about 30% is going to come from Kickstarter. Unless you're working with me in a hands-on fashion, usually the creators that I work with, because they're raising so much and because they're exciting projects, get closer to 40 to 50%. Yeah, but the answer is math. There's no clear, it's not like I can easily say, oh, if you get, 2,000 people on your email list, you're set. It's all, there are too many variables. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thanks. And
Okay.
do you have a recommendation on the length of time? Are there any limits on the length of time a Kickstarter campaign should go for?
Yes, absolutely. So, so it's usually about 30 to 60 days. And we recommend 30 days, somewhere around the 30-day mark, because Kickstarter campaigns have this unique graph where there's a lot of there's a lot of activity at the beginning because people are excited that you launched. And then in the middle, you kind of level out because they've seen your campaign launch, they're waiting to see how you do, something like that. So you get like a steady incline. And then at the end, it sort of shoots back up again because people are like, oh, the campaign is wrapping up. I'm excited. I need to get in on this and help support. So when you have a campaign that is 60 days long, that's a lot more of that middle time. And usually creators that opt for a very long campaign, like 60 days, they have the funds or the manpower to artificially pump up that middle section. So they either have PR lined up in the middle, they have big announcements lined up in the middle, or they have money to pour into advertising. But if you have a more organic campaign and you're on a budget, I highly suggest a 30-day campaign because then you're taking out more of that middle work and you're really optimizing around those beginning and end periods where you have a lot of activity.
Great. And here's a fun one. Why Kickstarter versus a different platform? Why not Indiegogo or something else? Why Kickstarter?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Well, first of all, you have my friendly face to help you out. And also, Kickstarter is, I mean, to be quite honest, we're 2 to 3 times larger than Indiegogo. The last time we checked, we were 3 times larger, but Indiegogo doesn't share their stats online. Yeah, so having a larger platform allows us to reach a lot more backers. That's just like pretty simple. Another reason is trust. We, early on in the crowdfunding scene, we made it very clear that we held creators to a higher standard in showing their prototypes, showing demos, and really making sure that they were being transparent with their backers. So we have an entire team at Kickstarter, our integrity team. They look over every project by hand, like they're actual human eyeballs looking at every project. And they will work with creators to rework their campaign if they do have elements that go against our rules. And the reason we have those rules, like around demos and prototypes, is to build trust. So early on, we were building trust with our community, and that seems to have really made an impact, which has allowed us to grow so much. Another reason is brand. So we're basically the Kleenex of crowdfunding. You know, when people say, oh, are you going to kickstart that project? They may mean on any other platform, but usually Kickstarter is the name that most backers know as well. So there's another level of, brand alignment and making sure that early on you're seen as, one of the top in your field. And to do that, it's good to partner with other people who are top in their field. And Kickstarter is at the top. But another reason is simply numbers. So that 30% is quite high in the crowdfunding world. So having 30% of funding come through the platform that you're working on is pretty nice. And you can talk to other creators that have used other platforms and sort of see what level of funding they got from the specific platform that they worked with. And we're pretty confident that Kickstarter is the top in this, but we don't have large-scale data to back that up. But it's usually a good idea just to talk to friends or other people who have launched. And if they did have amazing success in another platform, maybe that would work better for you. So yeah, it all depends on what your goals are and why you're coming to Kickstarter.
Great. We're running out of time quickly, so just one more question. So you mentioned one of the benefits being your smiling face. So What's the difference between sort of going onto the website and starting a project versus working with someone in your role? What's the difference? How should people get started with a project in that sense, that way?
Right, right. And if anyone is interested in following up with me after this, you guys have my contact information, so feel free to share. So I do give priority or preference to some of the creators that I think come from exciting programs. So I work with a lot of accelerators and, Stanford and Berkeley and, just programs that I know are turning out really innovative talent. And so when you work with me in a hands-on fashion, I will go through your campaign content, make sure that it's tweaked in a way that will talk to those repeat backers, that built-in community that Kickstarter has. But more importantly, when I'm working hands-on with a project, I will lobby for that project internally at Kickstarter. So I will, help get you guys more features. I will really talk to the curation team and share with them why your project is so innovative and exciting, and sort of build an angle for them to use as they're sharing your project with our community. And that is really a super valuable piece of working hands-on with someone at Kickstarter, because maybe less than 0.5% of creators get hands-on help at Kickstarter. It's like very slim. So you sort of stand out among all the projects whenever you work hands-on with me, and that's very helpful.
Is there an additional fee for that?
No, of course not. No. It's basically my job to find really exciting projects that make the Kickstarter brand more exciting by association. So we're not really looking for even highly funded projects sometimes. Sometimes I'm just looking to work with someone who's making something culturally relevant or going to move technology forward in an exciting way. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. So we're all out of time. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it back over to Gwen to sign us off.
Clarissa, thank you so very much for your incredibly informative lecture. We truly appreciate it. Should you want to work directly with Clarissa, please contact us at GoFly and we will put you in touch with Clarissa. GoFly will be working with Kickstarter to provide curated pages and to help you all in your campaigns. So thank you very much all. Should you have any more questions, feel free to ask us. And Clarissa, many thanks to you for today's lecture.
Thank you. All right. I'll see you guys later.
Take care.